Welcome to the Weekly Roar, coming live from the Lion's Den, helping new managers become great leaders and awesome bosses. And now, here's your host, Greg Storch.
Hey there, everybody. Welcome to the Lion's Den. This is the Weekly Roar. Today, we're continuing the series called Effective Thinking, Your Pathway to Success. I'm going to talk about another skill that we can develop to help us become more effective thinkers. This one is about recognizing the value in our creativity. You're going to hear more about that in just a second. But first, I'm Greg Storch. I'm the owner of Lion Enterprise, a leadership development and coaching business, and the founder of a worldwide bartered coaching program called The Helping Hand. I'm a certified professional leadership coach and a certified leadership speaker and trainer. Now, last week, we came together in the Lion's Den as I spoke about the importance for us to clear the mental clutter so we can focus on our thinking. I shared some of the reasons why you would want to do that and also how you can do it. Hopefully you spent some time assessing where you sit with that particular skill on a scale of 1 to 10 as far as your ability to focus on your thinking. Once you make that assessment, think about what actions you need to take that are going to move you from where you rated yourself last week to the next number on the rating scale. If you aren't sure what actions you might need to take, let's connect after this and just talk about how my coaching might help you address that. If you aren't sure what coaching is like and you're curious what it would be like for you, you can book a free 30-minute discovery session with me to find out. Think of it as test driving a new car. I'm going to put the link to my schedule right here. Use this link and you can book that free 30-minute discovery session with me. Okay, now, if you weren't able to join us last Wednesday, or if you just want to catch up, or maybe you just want to watch that session over again, all you have to do is head over to my website at lion-enterprise.com, click on the Lion's Pride Library menu, and find video number 114. That will be last week's video. All right, and hey, while you're in the Lion's Pride Library, stick around. It's a great free resource, and it's a really cool way for you to get more of the roar. Okay, what do you say we jump into today's episode called The Value of Creativity? Have you ever wondered why some can come up with amazing ideas while others can't? The ability to connect the dots, to see the larger picture, all rests in a certain skill: creative thinking. If there was ever a time for our creative juices to flow, this COVID-19 pandemic is it. Being creative is the key to success right now because this pandemic is forcing people to look for new ways to approach things differently. Businesses are thinking how they can reach new potential customers. Teachers are looking for new ways to educate their students. Restaurants, beauty salons, barbershops, grocery stores, the list goes on and on. But one thing is certain: we have to be creative to continue forward. You know, I love what Maya Angelou said about creativity. She said, you can't use up creativity. The more you use, the more you have. So true. Creative thinking is our ability to look at ideas or a scenario and find new alternatives or approaches. The good news is that creative thinking isn't a skill developed by creative people like designers, musicians, or other artists. A lot of people can benefit from thinking this way from time to time. And what's really interesting about thinking creatively is that the word creative tends to make us believe that it means original, but that's not necessarily true. Yes, you can have original thoughts as you express your creativity, but What if I told you that a lot of creative thinking is just an amalgam of other thoughts already discovered that are just built upon? I'm thinking about the art of dance, and that's probably one of the best examples I can think of to explain what I just said. There are hundreds of dance styles, right? But if you look at dance, you can probably see a common thread that runs through the art form of dance. Now, tap dance in particular is a great example of how one original style of dance was built upon and morphed into what we know as tap dance today. But someone didn't just start tap dancing. Somebody in America got creative and combined British and West African musical and step dance traditions. And that's how tap emerged in the US all the way back in the 1700s. When you look at tap today, you can still see some of the movements that connect tap to the styles that came before it. Now, before I just jump into this talk today, let's start out by looking at why creative thinking is an important skill for us to develop. Now, our brains have a natural tendency to fall into certain shortcuts, and that's how we can get stuck in our comfort zones. People who dwell in their comfort zone may not care so much about new solutions or approaches to things. And this is the whole point. There's certainly a benefit to learning some things and not having to rethink it, like using a fork to eat. But that way of thinking doesn't always serve us well in other situations. That's especially true when it comes to problem solving. And if you remember some of my previous lessons on leadership, you know that I've said that good leaders are great problem solvers. Creative thinking and creative thinkers are needed in those situations because it gets them out of that linear way of thinking. Creative thinking encourages us to look at other perspectives and even open up to the idea of new solutions. It can also provide us with a source of freedom. When we create, we have the opportunity to engage with the world without judging ourselves. It's similar to when we were children, right? Back then, we didn't care what people thought of us, did we? Creativity reclaims that same feeling, which can provide an encouraging sense of freedom for us. And another really important benefit to creative thinking is that it can build confidence. Do you shy away from presenting new ideas? Or when you do present new ideas, do those ideas get shut down? By tapping into creative thinking, we can build our confidence in our ideas and start to contribute to the group and our work at large. If you aren't sure whether or not you're a creative thinker, well, here are some characteristics that creative thinkers all have in common. Listen to these and see if you have any of these traits. First of all, creative thinkers embrace multiple ideas. Sometimes creative thinking means taking several ideas and merging them all together. That's really helpful in situations where maybe the original idea was not going to satisfy the original goal or problem, or maybe the idea is just not that great, but there are some good pieces of information in it. The ability to look at ideas and be able to break them down and dissect them and merge them with other ideas is a great skill to have. When it comes to leadership, this is a skill that could easily help solve disputes and find middle ground. The next trait is that creative thinkers keep an open mind and embrace ambiguity. Once you've taken in the information, it's important that you have an open mind. That also requires us to set aside our biases and stay away from making assumptions. We have to encourage ourselves to look at the problem in a whole new way. How many times have you heard someone say, That's the way we've always done it. Ah, I cringe every time I hear that come out of somebody's mouth. Now that's somebody who doesn't know how to think creatively. A strict and this is how it should be way of thinking limits us in the same way as if we looked at problems too logically or believe that creative thinking is somehow breaking the rules. All of these things limit us because we know that we have to have an open mind to succeed. Every successful entrepreneur in the world today had to break rules at some point in their lives. Richard Branson's work revolutionized his industry, all because he didn't back down to how things were. You can do the same thing within your own groups or in your own organization. Now, a third trait of creative thinkers is that they have an innate ability to connect the dots. Creativity uses the ideas of others. Of course, remember I just said that creativity isn't synonymous with original. So when we have the ability to connect one idea with another, especially with seemingly unrelated ideas, then we can add a lot of value. The ability to look at disparate ideas and be able to merge them together with other ideas is a great skill for us to develop. And probably one of the biggest traits of creative thinkers is that they don't fear failure. Samuel Beckett said to fail, fail again, fail better. That's exactly right. You know, we're always told that the best way to learn is by doing. Yet, when we do exactly that, we get criticized when we get things wrong. It's no wonder we fear failure. Creativity requires that we be willing to look bad or stupid or incompetent sometimes. Creativity requires that we deal with failures. Creative people understand that and they keep searching for new ideas. And when those new ideas don't work out, they don't let that stop them from continuing to create more ideas until they find the ones that do work. Some of the greatest entrepreneurs and innovators fail often, and they cultivate the resilience to deal with that failure because the only way to do something new is to learn to cope with failure. Thomas Edison failed over 10,000 times before he created a light bulb that worked. Imagine what our world would be like had he quit after failing so many times. Remember, mistakes can lead to the best results. Post-it notes were created when a new type of glue being developed by a scientist at 3M wasn't sticky enough. Who knows what kind of innovation your mistakes might lead to? Okay, so hopefully I've made the point that creative thinking is important. Now, what I want to do next is share a few ways that you can improve your skill to think creatively. So first of all, in order for anything to grow, it has to have the right environment. We all know that. Literally, when we're trying to grow plants and flowers, one of the first things we do is remove the weeds. And this is no different. When it comes to creative thinking, weeds can be things like our attitudes that devalue creative thinking. If you want to grow in creativity, then start pulling those weeds, the thoughts and messages you can think and tell yourself. The weeds are things like, well, I'm not very creative. I'm not a creative person, or it's never been done before, or that's too hard. It's anything that keeps you stuck in a box. That's a weed. And it will eventually strangle your creativity. So be careful what you say to yourself. If you think you have a great idea, don't let anyone or anything kill your creativity. You can't do anything different if you stay in the same old patterns and the same old routines. Now, the second thing you can do to improve your creativity skills is to challenge the status quo. And you can do that by asking the right questions. Here are some things you can ask to get the creative juices flowing. Why does it have to be done this way? What happens if we don't do it? Or who has a different perspective on this? Oh, and here's a good one that's kind of counterintuitive. What if you asked, what's the most expensive or the hardest way to do this? Most of the time we're trying to find the least expensive and the easiest way to do things. So when we think in terms of the most expensive and the hardest way to do it, it gives us a new perspective and generates new thoughts and ideas. If you want to think creatively, you have to ask the right questions, and that will challenge the status quo. All right, so you probably know what I'm going to say next, because I always talk about the importance of selecting who we surround ourselves with. But the third thing you can do to get more creative in your thinking is to surround yourself with other creative people. The cool thing about creativity is that it's contagious. We see it all the time in brainstorming sessions when people are just throwing out any and all possible ideas. One goes, and then another, and then another. And before you know it, the board is just full of all of these different ideas. There's no doubt that when you spend a lot of time with people, you begin to think the same way. So spending more time with creative people who are engaged in creative activities, well, that'll just lead to you becoming more creative. So there are 3 things that you can start doing right now that'll help you to become better at creative thinking. It was create the right environment, pull out those weeds, challenge the status quo by asking those challenging questions, and of course, surround yourself with other creative thinkers. They will inspire your creativity. Despite what most people may think, creativity is a skill that everyone can learn and develop. The fact is, everyone has an innate creative ability. It's being able to see things in a way that others can't. It's a skill that helps us find new perspectives, create new possibilities and solutions to different problems. So if you encounter different challenges and problems that need solving on a regular basis, then creativity is an invaluable skill to have. So crack your cocoon and surround yourself with creative people if you want to improve your ability to think creatively. Okay, everyone, there you have it. There's the third skill that you can assess to improve and become a more effective thinker. So for your assessment on creative thinking, just ask yourself this simple question. When it comes to exploring new ideas and options, am I comfortable with being uncomfortable? Where are you with this one on a scale from 1 to 10? And what do you need to do to move one number closer to get to 10 from where you are right now? So next week, I'm going to talk about being able to strike a fair and balanced view of things by being realistic. Yeah, it's time to get real. We'll learn how we can begin to look at all aspects of a situation before we make a decision, and why that can be a leader's best friend. If you want to hear more about the power of realistic thinking, then just come on back to the Lion's Den and tune into the Weekly Roar next Wednesday at 11 a.m. Eastern Time. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for supporting me and watching the Weekly Roar today. I appreciate you stopping by and listening. And until we meet again next Wednesday, remember, be powerful, but stay poised just like a lion. Bye, everybody.
Thanks for watching the Weekly Roar live event at lionenterprise.com. If you enjoyed this video, please tell others to join us each week here in the Lion's Den. Thanks again, and see you next week.